everybody else who can't make it today. So thanks so much, guys and gals, for coming. I appreciate it. What we're going to do, Andrej and I are going to present a little bit about the project, what we've done so far, and then our our proposed research activities for the remainder of the quarter to gather additional data and what we are going to do with the data. We do not stand on ceremony, so if you got questions, just shout them out. There's also a link in the agenda in the meeting invite. Feel free to write them in there too. I've got that up as well. But either way, let's get at it. So thanks again for coming. This is the unofficial kickoff meeting for the CI adoption journey project that Andrej and I are taking on. So a little bit about the project. This has come from the question of what is CI adoption and how can we help promote it, because it is seen as a gateway to more than one additional feature of GitLab. We want to increase the usage of those other items. We're going to go over what we've done so far and all those things. So I found this graphic. I don't know who made it. It's super cool on our website. And so we're going to attempt with this project to define what adoption consists of, especially as it relates to CI. We're going to hopefully uncover some additional barriers to that adoption cycle, that adoption process, and understand them deeper. And so the whole goal is so that we can increase the usage and conversion to our other features that sit over here in this area of our product.
Hey, Lorie, do you want us to follow along on our own in the slide deck?
I'm sorry. That would be that I didn't even share the screen. Oh, geez. Okay, well, thanks, Tal.
No worries. I wasn't sure if you were just going to call out, go to slide 3. I think that's where you're at. Okay.
Yes, I
awesome.
am. Jeez.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Stop me before I hurt again. Hurt somebody else. Thanks. All right. So this is what I just said. Love the graphics. So we're going to really focus on trying to get people converted to like the review, production, the CD pieces of our product, as well as testing and runners too. So what have we done so far? We had some stakeholder interviews with most everybody on this phone call. And as well as Brian Wald, we talked to him. He had done some prior research into this as well, so we wanted to get his perspectives. And the major takeaways were 5 major bullets. So the definition of the CI adoption journey varied. Everybody had a different perspective of what that actually meant. And they also had a different definition of what success looked like. So this is something that we're really definitely going to dive into to get a better sense of what our customers say these 2 things look like, and then we'll bring it back and compare to what we learned from you guys. In talking with the stakeholders, the triggers for CI use, we all assumed that that target user was already here. They were already using us in some capacity. That capacity varied, but we didn't really talk a lot about a green user who hadn't used GitLab yet and was coming in and going all the way through the first initial stages straight to CI. That's fine. This is something that we learned. We know that there are multiple barriers to both CI adoption and use and CD adoption and use. So there has been some research done. There have been many customer conversations around this. So we're not going in blind, which is great. We have a really, really great base of information to start from. So the next couple of slides are going to be all of our research activities that Andrej and I are proposing for this project. It will span from August all the way through October because it's a Q3 project. There are many phases. There are many efforts, and I would love your thoughts and feelings on all of them. If you feel like we're missing something, let us know. We want to make sure that this the outcome of this project is consumable and useful for everybody on the phone call and everybody at the company. So the first activity that we're going to undertake is a literature review. So this is going to consist of looking in our handbook. What is it that we say about CI, CD? How do we support people in our documentation in using these features? Is there anything missing that we might be able to add, easy low-hanging fruit to put in there? We're also going to do a dive into Forrester and see what articles they have around CI and CD usage and the barriers to those features and functions, and why people don't adopt them, or maybe why they're accelerated in their adoption, and what we can do to pull that information into our product and our documentation as well. And so in this activity, we're hoping to answer the questions on the right-hand side. It's our goal. We won't know until we dive into it if we can actually get answers to all of those questions, but we're really starting this piece to get a more solidified definition of what adoption means. What do the industries say adoption is defined by? Where does it start? Where does it end? Who is this most valuable population, which is the user for CI? We got variable definitions of that when we talked to each one of you. What's their goal? Is it to automate? Is it to reduce staff? Is it to increase efficiency and trust in their pipelines and their data? We're going to find out. I'm hoping Forrester will help us also understand the features that are most in demand for CI now and in the future. And that what point of the adoption cycle does having a single CI tool make it the valuable reason for companies to ditch their other tools and come to something like us? So those are our goals that we're hoping to be able to get answered with the literature review. Any questions for this one?
One comment, I think we're pretty cognizant that the CI adoption path is one of the first steps in a DevOps journey in general. And so I don't want to just add more literature review, but there's tons of research around the struggles for adopting DevOps. The DevOps Enterprise Summit produces a bunch of content. I can't remember the name of the organization that Gene Kim's publishes under. Jason, you might know that off the top of your head. But there's tons of content around the struggle for large organizations to adopt DevOps in general, and typically the first thing of that is CI. And then now we're kind of evolving to pain points around adopting CD.
Gotcha. That's perfect, Kenny. Thank you. No, please don't hesitate. You're not going to dump more on us. You're helping us refine our approach. So it's excellent.
Yeah, I do want to. I think what you're suggesting in that research is that you want to understand the context in this literature review, and I think Forrester might give you more of the kind of point blank market analysis of required features. But if you're looking for some of that context, it might be better to think of it in terms of just DevOps adoption.
Perfect.
Something else, maybe not so much for CI, but sometimes Forrester has some strange ideas as well. That
Yes.
So maybe we should, as it's all coming together, just don't kind of like assume that they're correct and then align us to whatever they're saying. But we can talk about how it all ties together and everything, which I'm sure was the plan. But I just want to call out.
Yeah.
That is the case. We've gotten strange recommendations from the past, and then we sort of convinced them of our vision rather than the other way around.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think we're looking for maybe the findings they have from other industries and things like that, less than the magical quadrant situation.
Exactly. Yeah, and they do have good. They do talk to tons of people, and they have lots of good. But it's all through. If you think about like who does Forrester talk to, and it's generally like medium to large enterprise customers, and sometimes they're dealing with different problems with adopting DevOps than more like what Kenny is alluding to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting information. It is correct. Yeah. It's got its own bias and factors that play into it.
Totally. Good points. All right, so our next research activity is looking at what we know. So we started that with the stakeholder interviews, And there's a link in the deck to the Dovetail project where we put all your notes and all your videos if you want to watch yourself. And as well as all of our insights are in there too. But we also want to dive into any of the other information we can get our hands on, any customer conversations in Chorus or anywhere else that they might be living, any other research like Kenny, Jason, you just gave us more to go look at, which is great. So we want to include that as well in our literature review of what we already know, so we don't try to learn it again, if that makes sense. Like we want to focus on the new stuff with this project. Any questions for this one? Okay. All right, I'm gonna let Andrej talk about the quantitative data analysis.
Sure, thanks. So as Lorie already mentioned, one of the outcomes of the stakeholder interviews was that the direction is not like super clear for us at the moment. We were talking about enterprise users, but also SMB users. We were talking about migrating from different CI tools, but also starting from scratch with GitLab. And to make sure that we have the direction set clearly, we have to work with quantitative data. So one of the research activities that we propose is to work with the data about product usage, so Snowplow, PostgreSQL database that we have, and usage ping, and try to find out who is actually the most valuable population for us, for the CI from the business perspective. Where is the biggest potential for growth of the CI adoption? Except for that, this is the main question, but except for that, I would also like to add two like more open-ended questions. While I will be working with this data, I'll probably also see some other patterns appearing. So I will also document that. Like, what can we learn in general about CI and runners from the usage data of our product, and also what we can learn from the usage data of our documentation. Yeah, that's probably it. Mm-hmm.
On that one, the research activity maps well to the question, which you said is like defining the most valuable population. I would consider Jason to be your kind of product drive for any product direction input into that, in the sense that, you know, as a product organization, we might say, well, kind of our most important strategic type of customer for us to understand their adoption journey is SMB, smaller teams, or larger enterprises. So please make sure you coordinate with Jason on not just looking at the data to target to determine our most impactful users, but also the product direction input.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would actually make our lives much easier, because, like, as I mentioned, like during the stakeholder interviews, we heard about like multiple directions that we might take. But if we decided right away in the beginning, we might focus on different kinds of activities that would probably give us like more more of the novel information that we didn't have before. So we'll discuss this with Jason. Thanks.
Can you define again what would be considered a most valuable user population? Sorry, Andrej.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a user that would be the one that would unlock adoption of later stages, or is it a user who is going to benefit from all the features?
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Andrej, I'm interested in your exact answer, but I think actually that question is for us as a product org. For Andrej's perspective, he wants to know that so that he can target what types of users to do research with, right? So I think we need to help him define who he should be looking for and target in-person research. And we do that by saying which ones would be most impactful to the business for us to drive adoption.
All right, that's cool. I thought that our researchers had already defined that for themselves. I agree, Kenny. Okay.
So we don't have it defined precisely at the moment. The way how I was thinking about it is like, as the goal of this whole research is to increase the adoption of CI, we would try to identify the user groups that would help us drive exactly this metric. So not the way how I was thinking about it is not who would like to use, for example, the following stages, but really increase the adoption of CI. But it's definitely on our agreement how we would define this. And this is of course a part of our. I'm sorry. This is a part of our of this activity.
Yeah, because that was one of the things that when we talked to each one of you and Brian, we got varying perspectives of who this is, and how to that point on that continuum of is it a decision maker, is it a user, is it somebody who's used it before at another company who wants to use it now. It could be any one of those, and we have a finite amount of time that we can give to this project, unfortunately, so we're going to have to figure out who we want to focus on for this project and dive deep into them. That's why we've got this question there. So, good question. Speaking of people, persona research is the next piece that we're going to dive into. In talking with everyone, it became really apparent that there are two groups that we might need more information about. Non-web app software developers, teams, that piece, those people, we don't, from what we understand from talking to everybody, is that we tend to focus on the web app people in either our documentation, our marketing, our messaging, whatever it is. So Andrej and I talked and we decided that that is definitely a persona that we want to explore more. How are they different? What, if they are different, what's going on? Are they different? They may not be, but let's find out. And the other persona that we want to dive into are these non-engineering technical users. These are like your scientists and professors and things that people who are not software developers for like a full-time job, part of a DevOps team, whatever, but they're using GitLab for other uses. Could be us, the design team. So we want to get into those two personas and understand them more, and then hopefully get a more robust picture of how do they play into the CI adoption journey? Do they want to use it? What's stopping them from using it? What's making them successful in using it? So those are the two personas that we really want to take on and dive deeper into for this research.
Hey, Lorie, can I ask a question
Yeah,
on that slide?
please.
As part of what you do for this particular persona research, will the output be also defining their jobs to be done, or
You're getting
validating?
ahead of me.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, don't worry.
Oh,
No,
I see the next slide. Okay.
totally the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
We work together too much time. So yes, so the next piece of this is out of that persona research, not only will we have personas that we can use and we'll put up in our handbook, but we will also have jobs to be done as they relate to CI from those two personas. So I know Tal, Dimitri, I think Dimitri wants to start doing some CI jobs to be done as well. But this will help flow into that. Not Dimitri, Whitaker. Sorry, I haven't slept very much. So
no,
we're hoping to also get this too.
Same thing on PD yesterday.
Yes, that's it. That's it, Lorie. Thank you. This is only water. There's no caffeine in this water yet.
So Lorie, let me go back to my question. So my question was, I'm assuming some of the output of the persona research is defining their jobs to be done, but would we also be validating whatever jobs to be done we've already defined, even because we certainly could if we have any questions around these two particular personas, because we don't have any plans to talk to yield DevOps and software developers and engineers. We don't have any plans to talk with them, but it doesn't mean that we can't take the ones that we have and see if they are applicable to these people as well, because we can put that in as part of our persona interviews for sure. Oh, gotcha. Sorry. Gotcha. Because the assumption is whatever jobs to be done, CI's product designer is doing is not going to include this group, this persona that you're researching.
I don't think Whitaker was going to target these two segments. I could be wrong. I assume she was going to target the ones that we know use CI. And,
the DevOps engineer, the software engineer. Okay.
Yeah. I could be wrong. But if she's not, that's perfect, because we can still use this effort to help flesh out that whole picture of CI usage and those jobs to be done.
Okay.
Hey, Lorie, on the personas, this is purely a Kenny hypothesis that I'm not sure I know how we would answer in this process. But the personas that you're looking at, they seem to be about individual adoption. And there is a component, especially when I think about the intent of this research, is geared around our new kind of go-to-market motion of land and expand, that we will land and we might have one team or a central team that offers GitLab CI to the rest of their organization, but they need help rolling it out. I'm not sure that how or where we could capture that kind of not adoption at the user level, but adoption at the org level sentiment, or if that's even really appropriate for this type of research.
My researcher gut has just told me that that's a whole new project, because I think you're going to have different definitions of end and beginning. You're going to have different definitions of what is adoption at an organizational level, just like you just said. Does adoption mean one team's using it? Does adoption finish when the whole org uses it? Does it finish when one team spreads to another team and that's the end of it? So that's just my instinct tells me that that's like a whole nother project to really understand it at an organizational level. But I will tell you, I will ask you a question to your question. Is that more valuable than us doing any of the things that we've listed here so far from an individual standpoint? Would you prefer this project to be at an organizational level?
So let me ask for clarification.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Are you saying that what would be the barriers to adoption for someone who's trying to champion GitLab CI adoption in their organization? Is that?
Yeah, that might be a good way to phrase it. I guess, and Lorie, to answer your direct question, I don't know. And what I would think from a there's a hypothesis that if you think of the funnel to adoption, the biggest barrier is just individual users being able to understand and get to a green CI pipeline. That might very well be true, and that's the place where our R&D investment would yield the best results. But it could be that no, getting to a pipeline is pretty straightforward. People can do that, but the problem is sharing a kind of organizational-wide set of best practices through CI is the difficult thing. And what I guess I'm just trying to suggest is we probably need to invalidate the first hypothesis before we move on to the group one. So it makes sense to start with the research you've outlined. But so maybe your response is telling me we should just look to see if the general thesis that we have there is an adoption journey problems in the individual user adoption are going to pay more dividends than the group one. We can look out for that, I guess.
Yeah, we can also look out for the converse too. Like, what organizational barriers do we find in the individual's desperate search for CI adoption for themselves? Like, what do they run into? What are they seeing that has overcome those organizational barriers? And we can use that as a springboard for the next round of research to dive deeper into that organizational structure and what is it there. Because when we talked to Brian, he had a very strong sense that from what he's done, it's more of an organizational barrier than anything. And I've dipped my little toes into talking to people about this in the context of other projects, and I found a mix. I found a mix of I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to, and I'd like to, but they won't let me. They won't pay for it, whatever. They just won't let me. So I don't think it's bad to start with one or the other. We just want to make sure whatever one project that we start with first gives you guys more bang for your buck that you can hit the ground running with it and we're not stopping anything, and then we can come back to that second perspective.
There's also the data that Gila had that was around like within the first 12 weeks, either CI adoption increases or falls off for a new project. And that's a trend that they've seen, and they've got clear data supporting that. That might be another way to just focus the research around something and ask what happens in that first 12 weeks that people churn or don't. Because I don't think we actually know right now. We just know that if they stay, then they grow and they adopt more stages. If they don't, then they just go away. But we don't really know what's happening in there.
Yeah, that's a great way of targeting it. I think at the end of the day, that is Jason's call, but it makes sense to me to start with something focused like that time period and the user's adoption journey. And if it bubbles out that actually the user's concerns or problems in that adoption are geared towards the organization's adoption, then we can pivot in that direction.
Hey Jason, this is Darren. Quick question. In that data that you were referencing a second ago, do we know if after folks drop off their quote unquote adoption of CI for the project, are they still using GitLab or are they scrapping GitLab altogether? Yeah, do we not know yet?
I think we can point you to the data. If I recall correctly, the cohort analysis was of those who churned. So of those who churned, we saw that their trend was that they were ramping down on CI the whole time.
On GitLab, right? Interesting.
It's a gradual like reduction in CI builds, in CI pipelines triggered, in merged requests submitted, which makes sense if you're transitioning to a different third-party tool than ours. It takes time to move all your pipelines over, and so as you move them, you're triggering those pipelines less and less.
Gotcha. So really, when we say adoption of CI, we're not necessarily talking about the industry CI. We really kind of focus on it because some of those customers may have moved at House Point to a different solution for CI, but they're still doing CI.
Yeah.
Right.
And on the organizational level of barriers to adoption, if you're looking at that data that Gila shared, there's two parts to that barrier. In that case, her data is looking at organizations that had already started using GitLab CI. And I thought one of the things we want to explore on the barriers are the users that are prospects that are not users yet, whose organization won't even buy them the tool to use. That's a different aspect of the organizational barrier to adoption. And that question is already assumed if you looked at that data, that their organization has already bought them the tool. So I don't know how you want to explore them separately. I thought the organizational adoption barrier was something that would come out as an insight of looking at, it'd be one of the factors that would be a barrier when you research out of your research finding. And then maybe it justifies a deep dive later. But if we started with that, you'd already made an assumption, right?
So
yeah, I agree with what Tao just said. And that I thought that was what I think that's what you said, Lorie. Maybe at the start you said maybe it's a whole new project, but I think we're saying it might be a derivative of this project if that's where it takes us.
Yeah.
I'll just mention, because it seems, I mean, maybe it's relevant, I'm not sure, but it's like I'm having flashbacks to a conversation I had yesterday with David, Director of Product for Secure, where we were discussing a foundational study for Secure, and we were talking about the adoption of secure features by developers. And what it seems to, this is just early thoughts, but it seems like the direction we're going to head is talking about adoption on an organizational level, in the sense that we are going to probably be talking to engineering leads and just trying to understand their attitudes around security and what metrics they would like to be reported on in relation to security, if at all, from their developers. So I don't know, that whole discussion around organizational level versus individual level seems to be happening here as well. And I'll just mention that it would be great, Lorie and Andrej, if we were to just, I don't know, I'd be happy to share a script and adopt it to my need, is what I'm saying, basically. So let's chat. about that.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. No, this is good. This is exactly why we wanted to chat. So thanks for taking time to do this synchronously. And then the last research activity that we have outlined for this effort is a quantitative survey. This is solely to understand the impact of the proposed CI changes, that is in the meta epic that Jason put together to understand, like, if we were to do these things, how would they impact people's perception or usage of CI? So we put this piece at the end of our, we have a nice little Gantt chart here. Go Keenan and his team. We put that at the end because we wanted to understand our people first, our landscapes first, our challenges first, and then we'll know better who to roll this quantitative survey out to get some data around expectations and impacts of these features. And they're all outlined there in that meta epic that Jason and Tal have been working on, which is perfect. So here is our swag at our timelines. These are children epics with multiple research issues inside of them that cover all of those slides that we just went through. But just to let you have a sense of what's going to happen. And this last one at the top here is the quantitative survey. Just cut it off when we did the pictures. So one of the things we wanted to chat with y'all about today was expectations and how we can meet them for sharing data as we go. Our typical plan is to put it in the issue, but since this is such a large effort, we didn't want to overlook any other opportunities to share information.
Not a direct, is there some way to do this in smaller loops over the next 3 months instead of one big loop over 3 months? Or is that just not really possible with the way, with user research? I can respect that, but just want to ask.
Yeah, what's your concern, Jason?
Well, that we won't get results for another quarter.
Oh yeah, no. So like when say the literature review, we are aiming to finish that up by mid-September. You guys will learn what we learn. We'll have we can either have a meeting like this, we can have an asynchronous chat in a document or an issue. So these are our little, I want to call them milestones because that's what we call our sprints, but it's our little checkoff points whenever we finish an effort. So they're not going all the way to the end of October. You will not have to wait for that at all. The persona research will take the longest because it just takes a long time to talk to 20 people. But the other stuff we're hoping to get done in a faster manner to get information into the cycle.
Okay, and it won't be like, here's like a little preview, but we need to wait until all the rest comes in before we act on it. Okay, cool. That helps.
No, yeah, because it's all to inform the rest of the research, right? So it's like, here's what we've learned so far. This is, if we're going to pivot, this is how we're going to pivot. If not, this is still what we're going to do. And now we're going to do this next piece. So it's like a continuous cycle of information. Cool.
You asked about kind of output formats
yeah.
and making sure that you're informing correct stakeholders. There is a use case for GitLab CI that is a high priority for the entire customer success team. So David Sakamoto's entire organization is aware and building kind of like adoption flows for how they're going to market with customers, existing customers or new customers, talking about how to adopt GitLab CI. So to the extent that we can update some artifacts on a rolling basis, I think this might also help to Jason's point, like, you know, as we do some persona research, we're updating those artifacts with what we've learned to date, and then we continue to evolve that, the better, because there is a real hunger for this type of research, not just to make product decisions, but to make on the ground, how are we suggesting customers adopt CI decisions.
Oh, very cool. I had no idea they were working on that. That's awesome. How, Kenny, how best would it be for us to pull his organization into this? Just ping them on the issue, or like,
well, I guess that's what I'm suggesting, is that this artifact, it's a use case document. Let me put it in the notes. is, I don't know where to put it. I'll put it down here in the questions. That is kind of like their playbook for going to market. And if we update that playbook links to the personas, but if we update kind of that playbook and the personas as we go, that will help inform his team. Jason's the point person, the product point person for that use case, but there are product marketing and other folks involved too. Jason, do you think that's reasonable to update that content as we go?
I think that's great. The other place that we'll update, and it will just depend. So I think the go-to-market strategy outputs should definitely go into there, and that's the place that we're all working from anyway. So it's like the ideal, perfect place for it. And not only that, but it'll bring in more people through the merge requests as we're making those changes. But then the other place that we kind of will do the exact same process is that this will have outputs to the direction pages as well for each of the categories, and then for the stage, and probably even to a certain extent to the section. So I would say, you know, our main outputs at each of these stages are merge requests to those two sources of truth. And if we do that, then it's in the right place and it will flow into planning and execution appropriately.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes. So much better than writing a report.
I added I made that go-to-market use case for CI a link to the actual handbook page that Kenny alluded to. Mm-hmm.
Cool, thanks, Tao. I also added, there's a deep link in that called specifically adoption journey, which will, I think, be very relevant about how the current go-to-market team thinks about promoting adoption within their customer base.
Perfect. What other questions, concerns, comments do y'all have for us around this?
I'm excited about it. Thanks for putting it together. I mean, there are two of you on this call. Is there one person that we should think of as the point person that Jason should be working directly with, or do we think of you as a team?
It would be me. Andrej and I are partnering, but because we both have other things we're also working on, we just decided that let me be the meeting person. And so anything you guys have, you can come to me with it.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Lorie, I think you probably mentioned this, but just to make sure I catch it, in terms of the first set of folks we're going to reach out to, are we just going to just cast a wide net, or we have like a specific quote unquote segment in mind? Can you remind me again?
For the persona research, or
yeah,
so we're looking at a high level. So that's where we start, right? So we'll have to dive into defining what is a non-app software developer. Is it just them? Do we also need to look at the DevOps people who work in these spaces? Are there DevOps people who work in these spaces? So these are our two big buckets that we want to start with, and then we'll probably refine down from there what that actually looks like, so we can start to recruit them and talk with them. So if anybody knows anybody who meets, is either like a scientist or a non-web app software developer that you feel would have some good information that I could talk with us about their job, I'm open, happy to talk to anybody.
Got it. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, maybe this is way off base. I was just kind of thinking in relation to Gila's data that Jason and King has pointed out. Is it any? Maybe this is too narrow. Is there any value in trying to chat with those companies that churned, or those organizations that churned?
I would like to get in touch with Gila and see, because that's what they did, right? They talked to all of the research was based on companies that churned. So I assumed that they talked with them, but maybe they didn't.
They didn't. It's just data.
Just data.
It's just
okay.
data. Yeah.
We can try. In my experience at other companies, you have a very low rate of people saying, "Sure, I'll talk to you," after they've churned. They moved on. But doesn't mean that we can't try and talk to them. I think it would be very interesting from, if nothing else but an organizational perspective, what happened at a high level of that. Why did they drop us? Why did they leave? We know the timeline, but what were the factors that went into that? So that's definitely something we can look into. And if we run out of time in this particular effort, we can definitely put that in our next effort, where I suspect we will be doing and looking at it from a more of an organizational standpoint.
There's opportunities for that with sometimes our teams do, I don't know which department it is, they do reach out to customers that are about to churn or have communicated they won't be renewing. I was pulled into one last week to sit in and listen. So I think that occurs. I can share with you the recording on that, Lorie, and then you can reach out to folks on where recordings of that may be stored somewhere.
That's what I was just going to ask, because if they do that, then that might be a better, we can maybe pull that into our literature review, or what we already know review, and look into that data and see what we can find out from them if they recorded them.
Okay, I'll forward you the email that I got after last Friday's session. It links to the chorus recording, but then the folks in that email you could probably dig to figure out or reach out to them directly where they store all those recordings.
Thank you, Tal. Yay. More data. All right. Anything else, Andrej? Any last parting words of wisdom? Or any questions?
This is super interesting, Andrej and Lorie. I'm glad you're doing this project.
I am too. I really am. I'm looking forward to it. Cool. Well, you guys all know where to find me and Andrej. Anytime you need anything, let us know. And we will keep you updated through the issues as well on our progress. So just like we normally do. And yeah, looking forward to it. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lorie. Thanks, Andrej.
Bye.
Thanks.